Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 338, recorded live on May 30th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week we have Samius.
Hey everybody.
Welcome back, Mr. Samius.
Thank you for having me on. It's Mr. Garovo.
I guess it's true.
You can call me Samus. It's all good.
As long as you only ask me to call you Samus or Mr. Garobo, I can do that.
Oh, you
Your
don't
other
like the
nicknames,
Samus
we
Garovo?
might have a little problems. I can do
Captain
Samus
Bunny?
Garobo, but
Oh, okay.
some of the things you ask Lessa to call you, like, we're not going there.
Oh, Big Papa.
This week's screenshot, Seadra blasts an enemy away in the 174th screenshot of the week. It's a nice screenshot. Although I was having kind of a debate in my head about which one is the one casting the fireball. I think it's the one in the back, behind the fireball. But it's a little tricky. It's a little weird perspective thing.
I agree, but wouldn't it be sweet if it was the other one? Like you jump backwards and the force of the blast hurls you backwards. Quapa Hadouken!
Yeah, it's it could be jumping in the air, but
yeah. I mean it's a good screenshot. I've turned in a lot of screenshots and none of them are as good as that. So now I understand why I never get a win.
We like to talk about Dungeons and Dragons online nearly every week. You can catch us through Google Plus Hangouts, YouTube, or from the website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by CyberEars, the awesome podcast hosting network. Shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be next weekend, and you can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com. We do have a calendar there that's pretty handy for that as well. On the podcast this week, we are going to continue our series on PUGs, and Samius and I are going to talk about etiquette and some things that you should consider about how to play nice with others.
And do what Samus says, not what Samus does.
Probably true for me as well.
Yeah, it's probably true for all of us.
I guarantee you pretty much everything that we'll say today, I've probably broken at least once.
Yeah.
But, we all have bad days. So, anyways, we'll get started with the news, which is, thankfully, since Samus and I can be very verbose, we have very little news to talk about this week, which is good. There will be no Lomania update this week. They had a little late problem that's going to prevent an update. So what we got is what we have. But they did do a public preview on the Twitch feed. It's a nice little, if you want to kind of get an idea of what the press usually gets to see, it's kind of a public version of what they do for the press. And I pulled a few highlights out of that that I'll share here. The first thing is that they were talking about the guild amenities. They mentioned that they show up as arc end rewards. Previously, it was kind of given the impression that you could find them just in random loot, but they mentioned specifically those amenities being available as end rewards of quest arcs. I don't know if those are necessarily exclusive. That means that they won't be showing up as just random loot, but it sounds like at least quest arcs will be a way to get those. I noticed that they had some video of the airships in Three Royal Cove, which looked awesome. And the bombardments that they use have the same targeting circles that you would see in Fire Peaks. Well, the graphic's different, but the mechanic is the same. The capstone quest, they showed some footage of that. It's an airship battle, which is going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. What do you think, Samus? Fighting airships?
Well, for long-time listeners of the DDOcast and whatnot, I've actually talked about airship battles a ton and trying to get airship battles to happen in DDO. So I guess you could say I'm very excited because it's another one of those ideas it seems like I've been latched onto forever, and finally somebody else at Turbine has had that same idea, or they're stealing mine, whichever. I don't know. And I think it's great. I'm very excited. If a few other very special ideas show up in DDO with this next guild update, I'm definitely going to go punch Glenn in the face for not giving me a job. Because a handful of these things he and I sat down and talked about in great detail a couple of Gen Cons ago. And I said there's like two more that I'm definitely going to be able to be like, oh, that's mine. So we'll see. I'm excited. This is the update I've been waiting for.
Yeah, it's looking better and better all the time. I'm looking forward to it. You can actually shoot the airship broadside cannons and ballistas on the back and stuff like that. And repair skill will have a use in game, or more of a use in game. It works for spell power for repair spells. Although I
Which
don't,
is important
it's important.
for some people or a
Yeah,
lot.
generally speaking, my two Warforged guys that can really cast repair spells, it's kind of overkill anyways.
You just cast repair twice if you need it to go off for a little more.
Well, it's like one reconstruct repairs almost the entire bar hit points, and I use it before I get low enough anyways. So,
Yeah.
um, but you'll be able to repair pieces of the ship faster, so that's kind of neat. Um, they mentioned a little bit. There's going to be an item in game that you can only use while dead. The cursed Jack Gibber's blade, which raises you from the dead temporarily as a wraith for a minute. And they mentioned that the graphic that you'll get with that, you will have a falchion through your chest, just like Jack Gibbers does in Three Bow Cove. So that'll be kind of neat. See, they mentioned that the Storm the Beaches ballistas will be getting an upgrade to the new ballista styles that you'll have in the Explorer area. They are planning on doing new swashbuckler themed cosmetic items, but not with update 22. They won't be ready for that. See, uh, they have a new cosmetic command, goggles up. If you type /goggles up, it'll let you put your goggles on your head instead of on your face. Um,
I
which,
actually like this idea.
yeah, I'm sure they'll catch a little bit of flack. Like, really, did we need this? But I'm sure people will like it and have
I
some
think,
fun with it.
yeah, it sounds cool actually, because like I don't like showing my hat because it's like you spend one of your like 8 attributes is your hair, right? So wouldn't you want to show that? I mean, so I like showing my hair a lot, but I like the goggles too, but I don't always like that. So it's like having them up there on top, and maybe I could still see my hair, but I don't know. It sounds like a nice feature to me.
It depends on the hat. Some
That's
hats
true.
I like wearing, and you know, Warforged. I kind of like hats on Warforged. I'm not gonna
Well,
lie.
see, and I just, I mean, with the exception of like the one pyramid hat that most people see me drawn with, with the exception of that hat, I don't really like any of the hats in DDO. Maybe the feather hat.
The feather hat's pretty nice. I also my Warforged Barbarian, when he got the red dragon helm out of Epic Von back when,
Back when it was special.
yeah, back when it was like that was the only dragon helm in the game, and it was a pretty rare drop, and level cap was still 20. Um, I wore that for a while, partly
Right.
because it looked cool and looked badass with my red dragon armor, but and I was maybe one of a handful of people who had both, let alone one or the other. Uh,
Right.
and so it was kind of like, hey, look at me, but it also looked cool, it looked pretty badass. So,
Yeah.
but
No, I like the idea of them doing cosmetic stuff like this that's a little bit more antithetical to pen and paper. So.
yeah, it's a neat little thing. Let's see. On the subject of airships, the Astral Shard airships are no longer going to have a guild level requirement, which is pretty neat. The plat ones will, although they mentioned that I think they said that the lowest plat level ship is now guild level 10 instead of 25. So you can get those a little earlier. And that was kind of the sum of the news this week. Um, they did talk about a bug. Scroll of Conjure Bolts does not actually conjure any bolts, um, and they're aware of that, but it's not a high priority fix at the moment. Although a lot of people chimed in and said, "Hey, we'd really like to see that fixed." So they'll see if they can uh, adjust the time on when they're going to do that, but don't expect it before update 22. Bonus days this week. VIPs get an extra 5% XP through June 1st. Everyone else, I guess, doesn't get a bonus day this week. Um,
No, I thought it was there's some bonus XP and then VIPs get an extra percentage. Is that
well,
wrong?
there's the 10% bonus going on right now because sagas are down.
Uh-huh.
And then there's
Okay. And
the
then VIPs get
VIPs.
the extra 5.
I didn't see anything
That's what
else.
I didn't know why we had the extra 10%. I assumed it was part of the bonus days.
No, it's until update 22 comes until they fix sagas basically.
I
It's
gotcha.
to account for the fact that you can't turn in you can't get the XP rewards from
Solid
sagas.
XP. Right.
Um, which hey is great for me because I don't tend to run a ton of sagas unless I'm really making it a point. And since they're down, I'm not really making it a point anyways. But hey, the 10% XP works in all the other quests that sagas don't cover. So, woohoo!
Exactly.
See, Otto's boxes are on sale, both Heroic and Epic, through June 1st. So you can pick one of those up if you're looking for them. Sales through June 5th. We have 20% off of Epic Destinies, 20% off of Tomes of Fate, 20% off of Keys of Destiny, and 20% off of the Motu Adventure Packs. Although I will say, I would consider, if you're looking at getting either the Epic Destinies or the Motu Adventure Packs, and you don't have both, I would consider looking at the DDO market and the Motu packs. They're still on sale. You can't get some of the better. You can't get like the special pre-order stuff, but you can still get like the Destinies and the Adventure packs together. And it may actually come. You have to spend real money to do it, but it may actually come out cheaper. I'm not. I haven't. I didn't do the number crunching, but you might want to look at it. You might consider that. The freebie for the week: greater crafting experience elixir times 5. You can get with the code MAKE29, one per account. Let's see. Community news. The Chronicle's not out yet, but they did do Jerry did for the Twitch this week, Blown to Bits on Elite, um, which they were successful. I think it took the whole hour, um, but that can be a lot of fun. I didn't watch it myself, but I'm kind of wondering how many times he died.
Yeah, that's one of those quests that's always easier to do in a very small group. Um,
It
this way,
can
when you
be.
this way when you start yelling fire in the hole, you run towards the other blue dots and not try to figure out where the bomb's not going. Although I think they changed it where you actually get to see the bomb on the mini map now, which is also a help.
That sounds right. I know. I know on Elite the mechanics of the quest change a little bit because if they have gates that'll come crashing down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did it, I don't know, like a month and a half ago or something. Probably on my live stream also. I was flagging for uh, the Lord of Blades on Samus because I'm finally done with my regular TR and I'm trying to get flagged for everything in the Epic TR land. And no, it was fun actually. I thought that was a pretty exciting quest. I did die, which is rare for me. So
I remember when it first came out, and I was on my BART, and I don't remember why I was doing it on Elite, but I was. I think there were some other people in the party or something, and I couldn't kill anything in there. My BART's not exactly the best combat, but the paladins were just too much. I couldn't do enough damage to overcome the healing. So what I ended up doing was dancing them, and then planting a bomb at their feet, and then running away. So like dance, bomb, dance, run,
well, that
which
works.
it was actually surprisingly effective. But how do you look creative there? The DDO Gamer had a Swashbuckler preview. Jeff tried out Swashbuckler on Lemania, made a Swashbuckler, and has some videos of movement and attack speed if you want to kind of see what's up with that. There's a bunch of events this weekend. The Guardians of Honor on Galanda are doing a roll to win event. Basically, they'll grab a couple folks in a party and you can roll and get some prizes. The Halfling Summer Games are starting today on Kyber. They're starting with Epic DQ, and they're doing a raid every Friday, I think, except for 4th of July when they're doing it on Saturday, something like that. And the High Lords of Malkir on Sarlona are doing TOD tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Eastern Time. Let's see. Dido Cocktail Hour did an episode 71 last week, which I listened to. It was good fun. And I think you just did it. You have another one that's just
We
out, right?
we just posted another one I think a few hours ago. Yeah. Now we're on a roll, two in a row, right?
Woohoo!
I know. I mean, granted, we always do one right after the other. Time being an irrelevant constant, but no, they're good. I think this week's I got to get the title because it's absolutely hilarious. Uh, lesson or infinite wisdom, I Sit Down Right Now, is I think that was one of the better ones that we've had in a long time. Although I'm getting a lot of feedback on episode 71. Apparently, people really enjoy it when they get me sidetracked on armor class. So it's apparently that's a thing that people on the internet enjoy. So not we're gonna do it now, but uh, it's always a good listen. So if you haven't got a chance to check it out, DDOcocktailhour.com, and of course pretty soon I think we're going to be doing Les and I live streaming on Twitch together in the same party at the same time. So that'll also be really exciting.
That'll be interesting.
It's going to be something because we really bicker like that when we're playing DDO. We're like the old married couple yelling at each other. It's awesome. It's crazy.
That would be entertaining, for sure. Let's see. Thanks for everyone who took the DDOcast survey. Just to catch a few notes that people put in there. I just want to kind of do some stuff. Mention a few things on the cast. For those who haven't been listening to the show as long, or maybe forgot about some stuff, a lot of people were asking to do a walkthrough of the pit. You can check that out on episode 316. The Crucible we did on episode 329. Jerry and I did that. Most of the raids have been covered. There's a few exceptions, but most of the raids have been covered. You can look through the Epic Education segments, which is probably easier to find on my blog, shamgar.dodocast.com. You can kind of scroll through the text versions of those, or you can find them throughout the episodes. I didn't go back to find those. If you just want the audio for those, if you email me at ddocast@gmail.com, I can send you the audio of just the Epic Education segments. I think I still have those lying around somewhere. But some of the other episodes, we did Follow Truth on episode 308. Deathworm was 336, and Fire Peaks was 334. So if you're interested in those, you can find those. We did an episode on selecting weapons on episode 302. There's tips for using Auction House in our Making Plat episode in 319. There's some self-sufficient tips on playing solo in 313. And we talked about guilds in episode 312. Not to say that we won't revisit some of those subjects, but there's some people asking for some of that. So those are some options for you there. In regards to some things not making into the cast, there's a lot of suggestions. Something like 80 some odd people gave predominantly very good suggestions. There's some of them or some stuff I've already done, or ones that I may not be able to do just because it's not something that there's some subjects that I just may never get to. Not because they're bad, not because that are not relevant, just because there's a lot of suggestions. So I keep a list of all the stuff that people have sent in. I try and pick just kind of the way that I pick topics. Or one is, what are people interested in? What's relevant? What are people talking about? What's current? And what can I find people to talk about with? Is kind of the three thing, or four or five things. Counting is hard when you're talking. So that's kind of what goes into what I pick for a subject. As far as dev questions, sometimes they're not able to give answers. So it's not like before I do an Ask the Devs, I communicate with the devs and say, hey, these are some questions we'd like to ask, and if they'll give me feedback, say, hey, we can't really answer that. We have nothing to say on that. So it'll just be like me asking a question, them saying, hey, we can't say anything on that. So I usually kind of don't ask those questions unless it's something that people are really clamoring about, and even just hearing, hey, we're thinking about it, but we're not ready to answer, that is something that people might get some benefit out of hearing. I also have been kind of exploring more of a theme with the questions I've been asking them, so it's not completely hodgepodge. But rest assured, as long as the question was a question that was polite and not rude or antagonistic, I still have all the questions from every question that's been submitted to me. And if you want to ask something later that's not through a survey, you can always email ddocast@gmail.com. and just say, hey, you should ask the devs this, or hey, you should talk about this, and we will put it on the list and see if we can get to it.
Hey, before we jump ship real quick, any topics or suggestions that you give to Patrick and he doesn't get to for whatever reason, or he replies back and says, hey, this isn't something that I'm really going to discuss or whatever, email that stuff to Samus or to Lessa and I. We will talk about anything for any reason at any time. And if you'd like the DDO cocktail hour, the easiest way to prompt us to do one is to send us a bunch of emails. So if you have suggestions that maybe aren't DDOcast appropriate, or they're questions that maybe you've asked Shamgar a couple of times about he just hasn't gotten to, send them on to us. We'll talk. We'll hit anything at any time, and we'll answer questions. We'll answer dev questions for you too. We don't care. The answers may not be true, or correct, or accurate, or factual, or even in English. But by God, we will figure out a way to answer your questions. So just send those emails over to us at the cocktail hour. All right, sorry, but
No, that's great. I should actually share my list with you guys. You guys might have some fun with that. I mean, there's some great topics in there, and frankly, it's just not particularly when you start talking about like, hey, do this build or do this quest as a walkthrough. Like my walkthrough list right now is huge. Sorry, I'm not gonna get to them all. It's
right.
just not gonna happen.
Well, see, and that's the huge difference between the 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 DDOcast and the cocktail hour. We don't have to take anything seriously at any time. You, on the other hand, you have to take things seriously.
A little bit.
So, I mean, we could do a walkthrough of a quest, and you would not know what quest we were walking through probably by the time we were done. So, and
I
you,
gotta
on the other
say,
hand, you get people through the quest.
your walkthroughs would probably have to have a drinking game involved,
It
right?
might. It might. Although, actually, while I'm thinking about it super fast, and you talked about the pit, I actually tweeted to you Lessa and Clankenbeard's 3D map of the pit. For people who haven't seen it yet, it's really great. That's actually one of the tools that I used relatively early on when we were starting to get the hang of the pit. So, like I said, I tweeted that to you, so it should show up on your tweet mentioned feed. And that's another good one.
Yeah, the
Just
pit's a tricky quest because the map is if you don't know the map, it's hard to navigate until you kind of figure it out.
I love the pit. And I've told this story before, and now I'm going to get off subject. But the first time we did the pit, I think it took us 6 hours, and there was like six of us in there, and then it weeded down and weeded down, weeded down. And the best part of it was Tobrell, uh, my best mate Tobrell. We played DDO together, and he actually had like an important date to go to. It was like a fourth date or a fifth date or something, and they were like going to do something important, and he kept texting the girl, "Be there in 20 minutes. Be there in 20 minutes. Be there in 20 minutes." The whole quest. We finally got done, and he's like, "I'm on my way." She's like, "Never mind. It's midnight." It was absolutely amazing. Um, so if you haven't done the pit yet, the hard way once, do that, and then jump on these walkthroughs because it's an experience worth having. It really is, especially if you get 4 or 5 good friends, grab some beer, plan on taking all day, and just love DDO for what it for a classic DDO quest.
I would say though, if you're the type that when you go golfing, you wrap your clubs around a tree,
Maybe it's not
maybe
for you.
yeah, maybe not a good idea. Or at least before you run the quest, make sure there's nothing you can throw within arm's reach.
Nothing you should throw. Don't put your computer screen. Um,
It can be if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little aggravating. But
yeah.
the
Okay,
first time
well,
I did it solo. That was I couldn't find anything to do, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna run the pit. I don't know why everyone hates this quest. I'm gonna go find out why. It took me 2 hours, and I loved it.
it's like I said, that first experience of the pit where it's like it starts out sweet and then it gets super painful and then it gets really painful and then it's like, oh my God, what did I do? And then it starts making sense and it all starts clicking and you're like, oh man, this quest is ridiculously great.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. There's a couple comments I wanted to to share. Someone asked to make DDOcast accessible for deaf gamers. I'm really not sure how to make that happen. I'm sorry. I don't know what I can do to make a podcast available for deaf gamers. If you have an idea, I'm willing to listen to it, but I'm not sure how to make that
What you got to
very
do
accessible.
is you have to learn American Sign Language and just sign as you talk the whole show.
I
Just right
can't.
there.
I don't know sign language.
That's what I'm saying. You learn. You take a class. You spend 5 years becoming proficient in American Sign Language, and then bam, you're good to go. And then you have an extra marketable skill. I love this plan. You get on this plan right away, Patrick.
Right.
No? Dang it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Hey, you might need to turn your mic up a little bit. I just noticed
Oh,
your meter's quite a
let
bit
me
lower than mine.
readjust a little. Here we go. How's that? Is that any better?
It works great for me, but I'm not sure if
Lessa makes me like point it at my nose so it doesn't, people can't hear me breathing.
there might be. It's one of those weird things because of the way Hangouts work. Is I can hear you, but I can't hear you in relationship to me. So I don't know if if on the podcast you find that the our volumes are quite different. I apologize.
I apologize too. I'll holler.
Yeah, we'll see how
No.
it works.
All right. We'll see.
Um, Although the meter that you just what you just said on the meters looked pretty good.
Excellent.
Anyways, and then the last this was my favorite comment out of the entire survey. Someone wrote that I hate to admit it, but I like listening to the discussion while going to bed. Gets my mind off the day's events and helps me relax. So don't change the nice, soothing baritone sounds. I'll do what I can.
You're the first thing or the last thing they hear before going to bed.
Woohoo!
Hey, welcome to DDOcast. I'm your host, Sleepy Time Shamgar. No, you don't think so?
I know that I can be dry, so hey, well, whatever. Um, we also have another contest going on. If you share a pug story, you have a chance to win a starter pack code, which is like catacombs and a level 3 cleric hireling that you can keep, and some other goodies. So if you want to share a pug story, you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. Um, Someone, in fact, did do that this week, and it was an interesting story. Um, I'm going to summarize because I don't want it to. It's a little antagonistic, but it is kind of amusing. Basically, the short version is they ran Epic Elite Study in Sable, and the leader of the group was a little strange and was supposed to be doing it solo for a guild, basically a guild application, a guild test, or something to that effect. So they ended up playing hide and seek in one of the side rooms while he tried to solo the quest, which didn't end very well for him apparently. But there you go. Do you have any good? You have a good pug story there, Samus?
Um, man, I would have to think about that for a long time. That guy's story sounds pretty great, actually. Um, no, I think probably my favorite pug story would be back before the pit was, or not the pit, got the pit on the brain now. Back before the shroud was outdated, back when it was still the end game. Oh, I don't know when the cap was 16. Um, you could get the flaming cudgel from Three Barrel Cove, and it drops on death. So what we would do is we'd call that the hot potato, and then we would carry that all around the shroud, and the people who, if a pugger, because we'd put this up when we explain it, but if a pugger would like pick up the flaming cudgel from somebody, they'd get some sort of prize. And I remember like dying in part 4, freaking out because all of these all these flaming cudgels from everybody else was sitting there in the middle of part 4, and I had to jump back to part 4 when it was over to pick up my cudgel before anyone else could get there, so no one else could get my prize. So it was pretty good times.
Be kind of a
But
fun way to run the quest. I don't know. Can you still does it still drop on death?
I think so. Uh, I haven't done it in a really long time. I should go do that because that would be crazy fun to have something like that again where
Do that and blown to bits.
And blown up heads. Yeah, that would be great.
or undermine, one of the two.
Or undermine, yeah.
Lone
That'd
Abyss would
be
probably
good.
have a map that's more suitable for that, but that could be an interesting experience.
Yeah. Because like I said, it's all about, I that's one of my favorite items. Whoever designed that one should do another one, but I mean it wasn't good for anything except for
Playing hot
marking
potato.
where you died, but um no, that was a good quest. That was lots of fun doing those kind of things. Did you have a pug story?
Uh, I shared one last week that in Lord of Blades I had a pug when I was leading and just wouldn't listen to any instructions at all. And finally at the end when the choreos start running around and things get a little crazy, he kept taking aggro of Lord of Blades, and I finally told him I asked him to pull the lever underneath the platform, and it was
Nice.
the only thing he listened to.
Nice. Oh, that's clever.
Um, yeah, I think it was nice and went and picked him up afterwards, but you know. Let's see. General gaming news. PAX Prime. If you were waiting to buy tickets, you missed it. They are sold out. I think they went on sale on Wednesday for
Oh, well
briefly.
then they were probably sold out on Thursday then.
I think they were already sold out on
If,
Wednesday.
oh, on Wednesday.
Well,
Well, there you
so
go.
there was a funny thing. So I was on my way to work on the bus. I kind of on a whim, just on my phone, checked really quick to see if they had sold tickets yet. Cause like it's mid-May, it's anime, and surely they've had tickets on sale. I haven't heard anything, so I checked, and they're like, oh, check our Twitter, and there's like the blanket message, is like, hey, they're not on sale yet. Check, keep our track on our Twitter feed, and then during my break, like 4 hours later, I was scrolling through my Facebook feed, like, hey, I got tickets for PAX. It's like, oh, guess they're on sale now, and uh, like but they were pretty much all sold out at that point anyway. So
I want to say PAX East sold out in 28 minutes this last year.
jeez,
I remember Steiner having a real fit because he was trying to get tickets, and I'm pretty sure that's what he said it was, like 28 minutes. So if you're not on the ball for PAX, you're not gonna make it.
yeah, and I mean I can understand the difficulties behind some of it, and why some things don't work, but ticket sales in general kind of need to figure something out to combat scalpers. That's kind of a big problem.
Yeah, it's an issue, but I mean I don't have a solution, so I don't know. I did
Yeah, I don't either.
hear from Cosmo that they're going to do a PAX South, I think, in Texas,
I've
pretty
heard of this,
soon,
yes.
and there's a possibility that Les and I are going to go. So, I mean, I don't know for sure. We need to kind of get an idea of how many DDO players are in that area and would be interested in doing something, but it sounds sweet. I've never been to a PAX. Um,
Yeah, PAX Prime is near where I live, and I've gone a few times. I've kind of legally snuck my way in. I've had some
legally stuck my
connection.
way.
Well, I had a connection where I got a pass 2 years for a day.
Let me help
Walked
you
around.
carry these boxes in, Mr. Vendor.
Well, last year actually I was working it. I didn't really see anything because I was working in different areas and kind of behind the scenes and everything. But I was part of the crew that took down the League of Legends room,
Oh, that's cool.
which was a lot of cable. I coded like 4 miles of cable or something silly like that.
Cable.
Yeah,
You don't want to
they
know
were
what I
doing
thought I heard.
they were doing it as a live feed. League of Legends was doing a TV, like I don't really know exactly what it is, but they have a tournament, an ongoing tournament, and they were broadcasting it live.
Right.
And the truck that all of that signal was going to was 4 floors down and across the street from the room that it was in.
Sounds
So
good.
there's a lot of
Sounds like a few minutes of work for you to roll that cable up and put it away.
yeah, it was.
Not a 2-day job at all, I'm sure.
No, it was well, no, actually, it took a couple of us. We worked for like 5 hours, and I think there was a crew of 8.
Yeah.
So it was a sizable thing to work on. That's for sure. Let's see if I could try and find the picture really fast, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. So
It's all right.
Anyways, that's kind of what's going on there. So, but if you are going to PAX Prime, we'll probably I might try and set something up since I live here and it's really easy for me to do. Well, if that happens, I'll let folks know about that when we get a little closer. Um, and that's what we got. Uh, Now we're gonna do something fun. Lessa is on a hot streak here because we have a commercial from courtesy of Lessa. We're gonna play that now.
Irresistible. Dance, dance, dance.
Otto's Dance Club has arrived. Ladies and male players dressed as ladies get in free until 10, and all Dirty Kobolds on tap are half price all night long. That's right, all night long. Because Otto's Dance Club doesn't stop until the music does. Don't know how to dance? No problem. Our bards will give you an irresistible lesson that's tailored just for your race and class. Otto's Dance Club, where you can dance, even if you don't want to.
All right, Samus, you got your bikini cosmetic armor ready to go for that?
No,
It's
but I
getting
was sitting
free.
here like I was sitting here doing my dance motion the whole time I was doing the ad. It was pretty sweet. Like dancing, 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 dance.
Lessa wanted to give special thanks to Martel of Arganessen for voicing that, and Chai of Sarlona mixing the backbeat with the actual Otto's Dancing Sphere game sound. Although I'm sure it's in there, but I kind of didn't recognize it, to be honest.
Yeah, I picked it out a couple of times, but I knew what I was looking for. I guess you could say. I was pre-warned that this commercial was going to be uh, existent, so I was listening for it.
And yay, commercials. We like
Yeah, I
commercials.
know they're great. I'm hoping to start doing either more, not so much commercials as much as PSAs. But I'd like to do some of those. I'm also hoping to start putting together more ringtones for people. So hopefully we can get the two of those things moving pretty quickly now that I kind of have some free times during the day. So
Yes. All right, so we're going to move into a roundtable discussion, and we are going to talk about pug etiquette.
oh, we're gonna.
This is going to be a lot of fun. Um, please don't hate us. And we are two players
You,
out of 100 million or whatever. But these are not necessarily we're going to talk about not necessarily always true for everyone, but they're
you're
probably
welcome to
mostly
hate me.
generally yeah.
You're welcome to hate me. It's fine. I don't mind.
But we're going to talk about being a better pug and just some basic etiquette tools that'll kind of help you get along with everybody and have some fun. Because people just don't like drama. It kind of takes order from the game, and what we're doing is having fun. So let's talk about pug etiquette. Do you want to start, Samus? You got something to talk about for pug etiquette?
I suppose we can. Mostly, I think, because you want to get a drink of water, but mostly when I pug, I I always default to that golden rule. Um, what I want others to do to me or for me or whatever, um, and I try to do that to them. So if it turns out that someone's being a jerk, I try to kill them with kindness until I finally snap. In which case, then I'll be a jerk back. But that's not always the best way to get things happen because unfortunately you're trying to be a team, right? So you gotta I mean, everyone's got to kind of pull the same direction usually uh, in a pug, or not. I don't know. I've got some stories from other people. I'll be happy to share at the end about not being great, but I know you have this sweet like outline. So
Yeah, I'd say just kind of as an overarching thing, the things that people often get into trouble. One is communication. It's just not communicating uh, expectations with each other, or not. How do I put this? Sometimes people don't communicate what they expect, and when those expectations aren't met, they get really mad at people. Um, and I think something that I learned or was told to me years and years and years ago that I kind of took to heart. A relationship, any relationship between any two people is 100% the responsibility of each of the people involved. Um, so, if as a leader, you need to communicate what you expect for the people that are following you, and as a pug, if you need some sort of accommodations, if you don't ask for them, you're not going to get them likely. If you get lost and stuck behind, or you don't know where you're going, or anything like that, you need some sort of information. If you don't ask for it, it's probably not just going to be blindly given to you. So I think those are just kind of two things that, or a couple things that kind of stick out in my head.
No, those are both good, and conveniently in DDO, you have the ability to send, if you're embarrassed, you have the ability to send a private message to the leader. Like when the defense guild pugged a lot, specifically raids, that was one of the things that we specifically said when we're getting ready to get started. We're going to give instructions verbally, and if you have questions or comments, you're welcome to send them. You can ask them out loud, or if you're worried about it, you can send a private tell, and we'll be happy to do that via tells. Because people get embarrassed. You don't want to necessarily uh, embarrass yourself. You want to save face whenever possible. So, I mean, it's a perk, and sometimes some leaders aren't going to say, "Hey, send me a tell." You might have to send them a tell first.
Yep. And, the story I say to it is, if you ask a question, you might get booted. That might be your response, that you're out of the raid. You're not going to take you on the raid. But look at it this way. It's probably happened, but I've never heard of anyone blacklisting someone just because they asked a question that made it clear that they weren't going to be, that they might be a liability for a quest. What I have seen people get blacklisted for is they go on the quest, they don't know what they're doing, and they do something stupid, and it derails the entire raid, and it wipes. Then they get blacklisted. So don't be afraid to ask questions. As long as you ask questions politely, knowledge is going to make you a stronger player.
Yeah, this is where I come from. If you ask a question and they boot you from the raid, that's probably not the raid that you want to be in for your first experience through that raid anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
So, I mean, it's like a gift, but meaner. So, I mean, go with it.
Yeah,
It's like a spanking. Who doesn't like a spanking?
and also ask questions before the quest is generally better, or after.
Or during, in the middle of combat. Hey
Yeah,
guys, I don't know what to do. Clickety clickety click.
particularly when there's a raid going on, and sometimes things get chaotic, and it may not be the best time to ask. So just think about when you're asking the question too a little bit. That could be,
It's
it'd be a good idea.
it's also kind of good, and this is again for learning something new. But there's a nice trend right now in DDO, especially on the forums, where people are putting together training runs or teaching runs. And, you know, I want to say that you didn't see a lot of those, at least not on our server, and not on a lot of other servers' forums either, until a couple of years ago. Specifically, I think Tobrel started a program. Um, and we did, I don't know, like 12 or 13 of the raids, and we did them a couple times a week. And I mean, we really we picked back up the raid scene in Sarlona for quite a while after we went free to play, and then real lives kind of got us busy again. But you go and look in other servers, and there's a lot of training stuff going on right now. So that's a nice trend that people are saying, hey, let's learn this. I mean, I got experience. I'm happy to help you learn. Because, like you said, it would be a situation where you'd click my raid, you wouldn't say anything because you're embarrassed, but you don't know anything, and then we get into a situation where we wipe because of some sort of crazy confusion. So, I mean, ask questions and look for those kind of moments to learn.
And you can also should mention too, there are advice channels. Every server has a default advice channel, which you can access by typing /A.
Which is not useful,
Yeah, it's
usually.
they're localized by public areas and instances, so it doesn't go to the whole server. I believe most of the servers, is it /help? I think.
/help will give you a list of the commands. I don't think it gives you a list of some of the open
Let's try it.
channels.
It seems like they're like, yeah, you can't get in a list of open channels, but it seems like a lot of uh, a lot of servers were doing. I know that like most servers were doing open trade channels and user chats. Um, I want to say this, a lot of them had help channels, but I don't have that information off the top of my head. But the long short of it is, don't be afraid to ask questions, particularly if you meet someone who's doing something a lot better than in something that you want to improve in. After the quest is over, send them and tell, hey, can I pick your brain for 5 minutes? Most people are going to be really accommodating to that, in my experience.
Because that's a flatter. I mean, if you're flattering somebody, hey, you did this awesome. How could I do it like you, or how can I be better? They're gonna be like a little stroked, and they're gonna be like, hey, let's go ahead and talk it out. I mean, I do when someone asks me a question. I mean, it's the whole reason why I do a podcast.
Yeah. I'd say, and conversely, on the flip side, if you are a pug who is giving advice, you might want to ask, like, hey, can I give you a tip first? It just tends to come across a little better. Sometimes it's kind of hard to do if you're in a raid, and I'm guilty of this a lot. I'll really step in a lot of raids. If the leader's not doing it, or I see someone having trouble or something, I might suggest something. Try and keep it friendly and whatnot, but particularly after the quest, ask them, hey, can I give you a tip? I found this to be really helpful. Maybe this will help you, kind of thing. So, I think that's kind of all I'd have to say on the topic of questions and whatnot. Let's see, what else should we talk about? You got anything that you want to hit up right now on etiquette? Oh, if you can hear me, Sam, so you might have muted yourself. I'll talk about.
I did it the exact opposite direction I
There you
wanted
go.
to. No, as you were talking about all these things not to do, I like reminders of stories that have happened that groups I've been in or these kind of situations have happened start flowing into my brain, and I just start getting these wonderful smiles. A friend of mine that I met through DDO, Wansler, he was one of those guys. He loved to lead and he loved to raid and he loved to do all that stuff, but he did all this stuff the wrong way. It was great. I think that's why we became such good friends, is because like he would see a guy doing something crazy and he'd just be like, "What are you doing?" And go into like a 20-minute lecture in the middle of the raid about why you're doing is wrong, and stuff like that. And the guy would just like, "What?" And it was crazy. And then like it was right after the bards got the -5 to your fortification, but the 5% double strike. And I would sing that all the time. I would sing it everywhere. Oh, he tried ripping into me one day. I'm like, shut the hell up. I love this song. This song's great. This is the best thing that ever happened to my bard. And I mean, and after that we became best friends because it's like, oh, the one guy is like defending his actions. Like, I don't know. It was funny, but oh man. I mean, if you're doing something crazy and somebody comes after you about it, I mean, don't get belligerent, but tell them why you're doing something. Like, hey, maybe they don't know the answer too. Maybe you could uh, show them something, and both of you could learn a lesson.
Yeah, I remember there's a time I was doing Lord of Blades, back when it was a little newer, and you can get a forge buff, which lets you kind of float out and you go attack pillars. But a lot of groups were at the time saying, like, hey, if you have that buff, attack the Lord of Blades. There's a couple guys working on pillars. You don't need to work on pillars. Well, what happened was I got the buff, and I looked. The Lord of Blades jumped in the air, and he wasn't. He was in the air, and he hadn't come down yet, and he hadn't. I'm waiting for him to land and for the tank to reestablish aggro and a platform to attack on. So I went and attacked the pillar for a while, and the leader started yelling at me like, "Hey, you're not supposed to be doing it." Like, relax. And I told him, look, relax. I'm just waiting for the Lord of Blades to get in a position where I can attack him. And he backed off, and that was it.
Exactly. I mean, uh, it's a. I guess that's a lesson that sometimes you do need to be reminded of, that we're all people, and even though sometimes the person in charge of you, or the leader, the raid leader, whatever, they might have a different perception. But then when you educate them on what you're doing and why you're doing it, then that communication is established and that information is shared, And 9 times out of 10, especially in DDO, some other games I've seen it hasn't happened so much. But I think we have a slightly more mature audience most of the time. People will realize that information and be like, oh, well, maybe even if that's not the optimal situation, you're doing it for a good reason. And they might tell you to adjust your tactics or ask or go into a crazy sideways rant. I mean, I can't promise you, but at the very least, you've done everything you could at that point, and you're not being bullied into doing something you don't want to do or put yourself in a situation where, at the very least, you're not sharing what's going on from your point of view.
Yeah, there's always going to be there's kind of this weird dynamic where a lot of times a party leader is going to go into a raid or any quest really with someone they don't know, and they're going to have an expectation of them being a mindless drone. That's kind of going to be the baseline expectation. But every player coming in, or a lot of players coming in, will, particularly if they know the quest, will, they're a thinking person, right? They're going to have their own kind of intentions, and they might do something of their own accord. Which, if you do the right thing and do something that's really helpful, that's great, and that's really helpful. If you do the wrong thing, even if you're well intentioned, it could be kind of bad and detrimental, and you end up with problems. So, when I kind of do this all the time in Fall of Truth. A lot of groups on Kyber, everyone wants to do the order of lies, confusion, silence. And generally, because the characters I tend to play in there these days are my artificer or my wizard, what ends up a lot of time happening is that the order is the direction the leader will give. Lies, confusion, silence. That's it. A lot of times what happens is I'll grab the confusion dragon and kite him around of my own accord without being asked to do that, because I know that it's very beneficial to the raid to not have a dragon trying to eat people from behind. That can be really helpful. At the same time, you could do something else that would be really detrimental, like I don't know, grabbing truthful and running him through the party or something like that. So
That is awesome. I'm going to start doing that.
what, grabbing truth and running him through the party?
That's right. It's going to be life lessons. Life lessons by Samius. If you can't live through this, maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
If you can't tell if there's a dragon coming up behind you, maybe
right.
you should grow eyes in the back of your head.
That's right. Surprise, dragon!
If you're gonna do that though, you have to at least go beep beep as you're running through.
You got to go beep beep. All right. I will remember that from next time. Definitely going to do that, though.
Anyway,
Oh,
so
my goodness.
anyway, we're going to take this next. Let's talk about fitting into the group, because if you're in a pug, you're gonna have to, particularly a new group of folks you don't necessarily know very well. Kind of what I recommend is gauge the group, endeavor to fit into the group. If you join a group and nobody's talking, and they're just kind of hanging out, just kind of doing their own thing, maybe don't come in and be a chatterbox. If they're being really chatty, maybe feel free to join in. I can tell you though, if you enter a group not talking a lot, you're not going to get in trouble for it. The converse is not necessarily true. If you join a group and you're a chatterbox, you're going to get yourself in trouble.
See, and I almost feel that's the opposite most of the time. And again, this is coming from being me, which is a little different than being everybody else. Not that I necessarily get away with anything, but that I can take it. If I upset somebody, I can take it. But I like coming in, cracking some jokes, try to get the party jiving together. Now, don't go in there and if everyone's talking about politics, don't be the guy that goes in there and like starts making dick and fart jokes. But if everyone is like dead quiet, make a few comments, see if you can get a little chatter going. And that may not always be the case. Sometimes you're just going to find that group of people where everyone's on TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or something, and they're not going to listen to you. But sometimes you can get some chatter going, and I mean that's how sometimes you make friends is by being that guy who's brave enough to kind of get things rolling. But you got to be careful as well. Don't step on the leader when he's trying to give actual instructions if that happens. But be willing to put yourself out there a little bit and see what happens. You're not gonna get hurt. It's a video game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of where I'm coming from with this is I've had numerous cases, someone joins the group and they and another person just strike up having a conversation and pretty much just dominate the mic or talking about something completely extraneous. And there's been times where I've said, okay, we're gonna raid now. This conversation's over, and I've been less polite about it than that.
And if that happens, then the people talking should be respectful and stop. But on the other hand, like I said, Tobrell and we've jumped into raids, and we've livened that raid up and got through that raid faster, more efficiently, or whatever, just by being the two of us bouncing stuff off of each other, and then getting a second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth person kind of going, because that chatter, especially if it's good-hearted, will improve people. It's like listening to music while you're working. It's surprising how much more productive you get when people are interacting with each other and having more fun. So you do have to be respectful, and you do have to kind of watch things, but at the same time, try to be that guy who gets things rolling sometimes if it's there. If it falls flat within like the first couple of minutes, obviously don't push it. But if you can get a ball rolling with a conversation, go for it. Give it a shot. There's no reason to be ashamed or embarrassed. If someone squelches you, again, it's probably not a person you want to be hanging with anyway.
Yeah, it's a social game. Be social. I mean,
Exactly.
that really will help your playing experiences by being social. But at the same time, recognize that if you're hogging the mic, so to speak, that may be problematic. Be aware of the fact that certain points in time you need to be coordinated with your party. You're getting a little breath noise there, Samus. But you need to be coordinated. There's certain points where you have to coordinate a kill or what players are doing, and that's not the best time to have a conversation that's hogging the microphone. It's also, if you're engaging the rest of the party with what you're saying, then that's great. But when you consider the fact that if you and one other person are having an ongoing conversation that's by its very nature exclusive to the rest of the party, you're not really engaging those people, and you might actually be turning them off a little bit. So things to keep in mind. But be social, absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act, and with practice, you'll get it figured out. Just like putting my microphone way at the top of my nose, regardless of whether or not Shamgar would like me to have it lower.
Yeah, here's the thing. This is what I say. Gauge the group you're in. Each group is going to be a little different. If you're running with the same people in the guild or user chat or whatever, people that it'll be a lot easier because you'll have a lot more of a rapport with them. But when you join a group, try and, as you're going, figure it out, gauge it a little bit. What's kind of appropriate behavior? What's kind of turning someone off? Be respectful and have fun, but still be social. That's totally fine.
Because if you think about it, the people who are on during your time slot are kind of like a big meta group. And you want to try to build a rapport with those people too, because if you're playing every day at 6 o'clock, they're probably playing every day at 6 o'clock. And that's how you develop those kind of situations where, hey, such and such is good. I need one more person to fill X. Let me see what they're doing. It gets that kind of those juices flowing. So just because, you're working the party you're in, you're also working the parties for tomorrow and the next day and the day after.
And just a kind of a little tip too, if you find yourself to be a particularly chatty person, or you notice to be chatty, or you're kind of always hogging the mic, consider typing for a while. Take a break from the mic, use the keyboard. It'll slow you down a little bit, for one. But two, it also, you can, particularly like if you're saying a raid or a point where you need a lot of coordination, you can have a fun little conversation on chat or in typing chat instead of voice chat. And that lets everyone else communicate by voice, and that's totally fine. That's a great way to do it as well. At the same token, though, if the leader is is pretty much using chat to do a lot of instructions, or maybe the leader doesn't have voice and they're only using chat, well, maybe you should use voice instead of the chat box. So things to consider.
The other thing you can do is keep an eye on how that leader, like you said, is leading. And if he is doing something primarily through chat, keep half an eye on there to help make sure the timing issues are working out. I know that we've had to have that situation a lot, like the leader is typing the whole time and you're at a timing situation and the leader's typing but no one's listening to the chat box. So, I mean, you throw that in there too sometimes. Just always try to be a helper.
Yeah, I would always, the way that I play, I would say you should always keep an eye on the chat box. And consider, this is a tip, consider moving the chat box. It can move on your screen. Find a place where you can put it that when something pops up, you can at least, glance at it and look over. You can also expand the window too. You can make the chat box bigger. So that's also an option. So you can see more than, I think the default is like 2 to 4 lines of text. But you can make the box bigger. So.
Yeah, I threw basically my my setup over on my side of the screen or whatever, and that's kind of how I keep things. I keep my main hit points right next to the tag box, so I can I can monitor that box pretty much all the time, and that's a good thing to kind of get in the habit of is, putting it, when you fly an airplane, they call it the T, right? Where you look side to side and up and down. Those are your like crucial gauges. In DDO, it's not really a T, but it could be. It could be whatever design you need it to be. But one of the things that you should add to your scan when you're monitoring everything that's going on should definitely be that chat box.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I keep mine as well. It's kind of funny that the chat box actually, you can't really tell in this picture because they're kind of melding together. The chat box actually has a little cutout, a little semicircle cutout in the bottom left corner that goes around that D&D ampersand sign. So it actually works really well to put it there,
Yeah,
oddly
I
enough.
think they did that because they found that most people stuck it down in that corner.
Yeah, and that's a good place. But here's the thing: spend a little time. Spend 5 minutes playing with the chat box. Get it somewhere you want it. Get your chat tab set up. If you're running in a party, at least if you're actively questing, or definitely if you're in a raid or somewhere that might need coordination, at least have party active. I pretty much run with everything because I can handle the information and read it really fast, and it doesn't bother me to have it scrolling through or anything like that while I'm playing. And if that's not you, that's totally fine. Maybe when you're partying, you just have the party chat on, the party tab on. Take the loot out of it if that bothers you. Actually, that I highly recommend that. Have a tab that's just party, doesn't have the loot in it, so that you can, if you need to go back and reference what the party leader's been saying, or instructions the party's given, or assignments, which is really the big one, you can find it a lot faster in a tab that's just party chat. So some tips with talking and being communicative. I will say also in your interactions with the leader, particularly if consider what's going on in the situation. If a leader asks you to do something, what's going on? If the raid's going sideways, it's probably not the best time to argue the point, right? It's not a good time to get in an argument with the party leader about what you should or shouldn't be doing. So if at that point, as long as the leader hasn't proven themselves to be completely inept at leading, just do what they say. Argue the point later.
I would definitely agree, and that is a very difficult thing to do, especially in the heat of the moment, because, like you said, things are going sideways. You know what you should be. Well, you might know what you should be doing. You might have a better idea. You might know how to save this thing. But as long as the leader still has firm grip of the reins, let him do what he says or do what she says. We shouldn't be sexist, but follow their lead. But there's a point, and it's a different test for every person. And I wish I could come up with a guideline or something to help people. But there's a point where the leader loses the grips on those reins. And if you're comfortable with doing it, and you know you feel it happen, and the rage just completely slides, don't be afraid to step up and like, all right, bam, I'm taking over. We're gonna save this thing and do it. But by God, you better be the guy that saves that raid if you do that. Because if you're not, and you're the guy who took it out of the leader's hands, then it becomes your fail and
Yeah.
not his fail.
Yeah. I would recommend if you do that, you may have wanted to have led the raid at least a couple times before you do that.
You have to have led it a couple of times. You have to be pretty intimate with it. You have to know why this is going sideways and how to fix it with what you have. And it helps if you can trust a couple other people, like, hey, so and so, you've done this raid a couple of times before, right? Yeah, okay. I need you to do X. Take whoever you need and get X done now. And so and so, you can do X, right? Yeah, okay. Take whoever's around and get it done. I mean, it's one of those things where if you do that, though, you are taking responsibility. You're like, I'm the leader now. This is what's going to happen. And people aren't going to remember the party wiped and it was somebody else's fault. The people are going to remember you stepped up to take charge and it was your fault. So be really comfortable with that decision. Worst case scenario, you don't say anything the raid wipes. Guess what? It was going to wipe if you're not comfortable and you're not ready to step up.
And
So
if you are really comfortable with the raid, maybe when you join the group, send leader tell and say, hey, I'm really familiar with this raid. I believe it a lot. If you need some help, let me know.
yeah, I mean it's
That's
easy
real
to
helpful.
do that. It's really it's always good that for the leader to know who they can count on in a tough situation.
Communication is very helpful. But as a person who leads raids with a pretty good regularity, not as much as I used to, but I've led a lot of raids. The thing that kind of sticks out for me when from players, the things that I remember are one, they were really a pain in the butt, and I had to really control them, and they kept getting in my way. That's the first thing I'm going to remember. The second thing I'm going to remember is, that person did everything I asked of them when I asked of them. Period. There wasn't a conversation about it. There wasn't literally, I have been in situations where I've had 5 people asking to join and get 3, and I got 3 slots left, and the last person on that list was someone that in like a couple days before, I literally threw him under the bus. The raid was going sideways, and I needed someone to grab. I think it was the Spectral Dragons in Fall of Truth, and I needed someone to get something under control. And I literally looked at the list and he's a monk. He's got improved evasion. Hey, go grab the Spectrals. That was the sum of my thought process. I needed someone to grab him. I needed someone to get him out of the way for a couple minutes, and and he didn't say anything about it. He went and did it. He only held him for about a minute and a half, I think, and then he got killed.
That's probably
But
long enough.
but that minute and a half was exactly what we needed at that time. And when I saw that I grabbed him. There were 4 other people, and I grabbed him first because he did something that I asked, and I sent him to his death, and I didn't think twice about it. But he
Well,
did it.
and that's goes back to what I was saying before about you're building that meta game group reputation to kind of get everything up and running, and it really helps really make those kind of decisions. And you just saw there's a perfectly good example of why you want to develop those kind of relationships, because the people who lead and they lead often will remember you.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that the people that I tend to remember are the people that get in my way. The other
Most
people
of
I
the time.
tend, the other people I tend to remember only if they've joined the group a couple of times, and they haven't gotten my way. I'm like, okay, I recognize the name. It doesn't ring a bad bell. Yeah, I'll take them.
And
But
often that's the best you're going to get until you step that up into a further relationship is, hey, I know this name, but I'm not remembering a bad taste. Let's do it.
yep, pretty much. That's most. I think that for leaders, that's most of their experience of remembering people in a group. And I've seen like in guild, the other guy's leading the raid, and he says, "Hey, anyone recognize this name?" Like, it rings a bell, and nothing bad comes up, so probably fine. So stuff like that.
That's like the best compliment you'll ever get in trying to like get into a pug. I tell you right now, it doesn't sound very good, but it really is. It's like, yeah, I know that guy, but I don't think he pissed me off. So
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's gamble.
in a figure in a night of leading, let's say I run 4 raids with 12 people in each, or 11 people in each raid. That's 44 people. You figure, okay, maybe I'm going to run at 30 people in a night. Um, Mostly I'm going to remember the people that got in my way. And maybe out of that number, 3 or 4, I'll remember like having given them a task and they did it, and they even if they didn't necessarily do it well, but if it was a task that they asked for, if they did it well, I'll remember that. But also the aspect of, if I gave someone something on the fly like that, the one guy I was talking about, it was ad hoc. It wasn't something he was intending to do. Probably wasn't something he was even built to do. But he went and did it. Like he followed instructions quickly and effectively. Like that's what, as a raid leader, when you do recognize that with a name, that's something you try and remember because those are people you want in your raid or your group, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you want to be that guy who is remembered for doing whatever is necessary the best you can, regardless if it like in that situation where the best you can is a minute and a half and then you're dead and then it falls back to chaos. But that is exactly what the raid needed at that time.
Yep. Let's see. Let's talk about loot for a bit.
Oh my, that's a deep well.
Yeah, it is. But so let's just talk about like loot etiquette. And pretty much everyone you're ever gonna meet is gonna say it's your loot, your call, right? Pretty much no one's gonna argue with that point. Having said that, there are things that you can. What was that?
I was gonna say it. You would like to think that, but often I find that uh, they might say that, but individual people's greed has a tendency to win out over your loot, your call. It's your loot's my loot, my loot's my loot kind of mentality. Is what you'll most often run into. That being said, continue on, sir.
Yeah. That being said, it's your loot, but what you do with it is an indicator of the kind of player that you are. Um, things that a lot of people do that, if you pull a raid item and you loot it, most people don't argue. Even if you took the healing item that the cleric was on his 40th one trying to get, and you're on a fighter, at most, in my experience, most of the healers will be like, "Oh man, I really wanted that," and the fighter took it. Well, he looted it, so it fell in his name. It's kind of his right. That's generally as far as it's going to go. If you give something to a guildie or a good friend, there might be a little grumbling, but most often, I think players generally respect that. Now, we're generally will get you into trouble that people don't like to see is one rolling on loot that is kind of obviously not something that you should be rolling against someone else. Classic example would be the healing items. If you're a fighter and you're rolling on a healing item against the cleric, people tend to kind of notice that. Although it's less of a thing in today's game where pretty much anyone can have cocoon or something like that.
This is me. I am that guy. Especially on a character like Samus. If it's something I don't have and I have the slightest notion that I might use it in the near future, I'm going to roll on it. And you have I got some flack for it from my own guildies, but it's like, hey guys, I rolled on it. If a guildie wanted it, I probably wouldn't roll against them. But in a regular group, like when people actually still ran web, Samus, when he was a wizard, he rolled on a lot of the melee weapons and got them. And now, he's a monk. He uses a lot of those melee weapons. When I was on the TR train, I used a lot of those melee weapons. I would never roll on something I know that I would never ever use. But if there's something that I have a relatively clear path that I'm going to use, by God, I'm going to roll on it. And if someone gives me flack because of my current life, I'm just going to be like, hey, look, dude, I'm a double completionist working on my triple completionist. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, and it's a lot. That line is a lot fuzzier today than it used to be. Back before TR was even a concept,
Exactly.
this was kind of more of a thing that pissed people off a lot. But like I said,
Because it's their loot.
in today's world, it's a lot less of a problem. People accept the fact that people change their builds all the time through true reincarnation, so bind to character stuff is a lot of things. People get that, with Epic Destinies, every character can use some number of spell points to cast Cocoon, so having a healing item maybe can be really benefit to them. So that's something, but and I'm not going to say don't roll on that kind of stuff. As a suggestion, this is kind of how I approach some of this stuff. Particularly when we're talking about a healing item for a cleric, because healers kind of tend to be in shorter supply and get thrown under the bus a little bit more, or they need a little extra incentive sometimes. If I'm rolling an item that, hey, maybe I'd like, but I know that it's a healing item. When we start rolling, I'll kind of watch where the rolls are going. If that guy that could use it is more likely to use that item a lot is winning, I generally won't roll against them. But if, say, the fighter is winning the roll for the healing item, heck yeah, all bets are off. I'll roll against them.
And that's one of those things that you kind of figure out as you kind of figure out who you're playing with and how you are. I mean, like I said before, everyone's loot's my loot, And if I see a piece of loot and it may not be going to the person I think that should go to, and it's open for roll, then you got to make that judgment call. Like, do you want to roll on it? I mean, what happens if you do win? Then you're like, oh man, now I got to take it, because by God, if you win that roll against a bunch of other people who want it, you better take it. And if you don't take it, then you better give it to the next person that wins that roll.
Which I've done. I've done that a few times. Like I'll roll and like, that guy really wanted it. He was jumping up and down for it. He's really bummed he didn't get it. Like, I'm gonna pass.
Exactly.
He's
and
the next guy on the list.
But if you turn around and give that to somebody else, or if the worst is if you sell it, then that'll put you on people's list like nothing else. That being said, situations do happen where, kind of those scenarios come up, and there's exceptions to every rule, and you got to kind of play it to the best of your ability. Like I remember, I hate to do it. I'm going to tell another story, but back in the day, before I think the cap was still like 14 or 16 or something, the wife and I got into a Demon Queen raid, and I don't even remember what the loot was now. Something stupid like the goggles or the belt or something. And I had rolled and lost the roll, and another guy who had brought in a piker rolled, lost the roll, and then asked if he could roll on his piker, and then rolled on his piker and got the second highest roll, where my wife ended up winning. And she couldn't. She was like, I want it, but am I going to use it? She was on her cleric. There was no TRing. There was none of that. She could use it. It was gear that she definitely would use, and she was back and forth, and I'm like, dear, either just take it, or if you want, I'll go to the restroom, and you can just think about it while I'm gone, and then you can, if everything else happens, you can just kick it to me if everyone else leaves, or you can send that guy a tell and say, hey, I'm still debating on whether I want it. And she waited, and she waited, and she waited, and then everyone recalled out of the raid, but that guy didn't drop the group. I'm like, I don't know. And I come back and I sit down, she goes, yeah, I don't think I'm going to use it. And I said, okay, well, I'll take it. And she passed it to me, and I took it. And the guy like got really uppity with us in the chat. He's like, "Yeah, I had the feeling that she was just rolling for you, blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "No, that wasn't the situation. She wanted, she wanted the opportunity to just make the decision for herself." But he's like, "Yeah, I would have used it." I'm like, "Well, your character didn't win the role. Your piker won the role, so you would have had to give it to your piker anyway." And he's like, "Well, that's not necessarily the truth." I'm like, "Well, I mean, so that's one of those stories that stands out in my mind. I don't play with that guy. I've never played with him again. I don't even remember who he is, but I put him on my friends list and as blocked, and I've never played with him again. Hopefully, he's done the same to me. It's just one of those situations. People get so crazy over loot, and it's one of those deals. It's like, right, it's all mine. It's all mine. The fact that you have loot is a gift that I give you. You should just put that loot to me, and I will decide who gets that loot. It's very, very emotional, but you just have to think back and relax and remember it's a game, and remember that people are going to get emotional over it, and make the best decision you can.
Yeah, and I've made some poor decisions along the way once or twice. But I'd say if an item's up for roll, if you're not gonna use it, don't roll on it.
Exactly. That's rule 1.
Don't roll on it and then turn around and give it to someone else.
That's rule 2.
No rolling by proxy. Those two things will kind of really tick people off. So just kind of keep those things in mind. So, I mean, that's kind of as far as rolling for loot goes. And these days, like I said, no one's really gonna bust you too much for rolling on an item, winning it, taking it, even if it's something you might not. The guy that's really wants that item has been in that raid 40, 50 times and really wants that item, and you beat him. He's gonna be bummed, but he's probably not gonna hate you.
He'll be in there the 41st or 51st time to try to get it. I mean, it's just how it works.
Yeah. Although I would say, kind of as a slight tangent, if there's an item that you don't want, actually we'll occasionally make a transition here. If there's an item that you pull that you don't want, some things that would be acceptable to do with that, putting it up for roll is a really common one, and it's something that I generally support in the sense that it gives everyone a fair shot of getting it. As opposed to if you say sell an item, then you're kind of, then the haves keep and the have-nots can't get, right? So keep that in mind. I always prefer, particularly with raid items, anything that's going to be bound to character or bound to account, I prefer to put up for roll myself. If it's not bound, then I'm going to loot it, whatever it is, and unless it's a friend, I might give it to a friend later or whatever, or even there, or sell it on the auction house. But if it's not bound and I pull it, and I don't know you, you're probably gonna have to give me something or have stuck out and say, "Yeah, here, you can have it. I don't care."
I mean, everyone's kind of got their own like little cue on how things work, right? I mean, it's just a fact of life. Me, if I'm not gonna use it, I'm probably gonna ask the wife first if she's sitting right there, and I have no problems giving things to her or giving things to guildies first. Yeah, I mean, those are the people that I play with. That's the core that I want to make stronger. Those are the people I'm going to frequent. Then, if none of them want it, I'm just going to ask. Be like, hey, does anyone need this? I'm not going to necessarily go through this fighting of rolling the die, because it might just be one guy wants it. Because then the rest of the time you're like, anyone else going to roll? Anybody going to roll on this? 2 seconds. If there's 2 people who want something, boom, roll.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
It's a no-brainer. Boom, roll. Now, that being said, I don't care if you sell your loot. I don't care if you take bids. I don't care if you give it to your friend without saying anything. I don't care. But all I care about is if it's in my name or somebody else's name. It doesn't matter. Keep in mind, that might be the only thing they get in that chest. And if you start demanding it or you get upset over it or whatever, just keep in mind, you all work together to complete that raid, and they're not getting loot now. They have no reward for that raid necessarily, especially not on the level of the raid loot that they got in the box. They didn't get that shiny, and they're giving it to somebody else. Have a little bit of respect for that person who's saying, I don't necessarily need rewarded from this raid. Doing it was worth it, and maybe the loot karma gods will come back and help me out the next time. They really don't need you tearing them up afterwards.
Yeah, and that's a really really good point. I would say just kind of some things to keep in mind. Um, a lot of players don't like bidding wars. I'm one of them.
I
I
don't
won't
either.
I won't stop you. I generally won't participate,
Exactly.
which is my prerogative. And I may choose not to run with you over someone else. Also my prerogative. Not that I hate you or anything like that. And there was an item back in the day that someone pulled, and I asked, "Hey, I was kind of sitting there for a while, and like, hey, are you gonna take it? Because if you are, I'm just gonna leave, and that's fine. But if you're not, I'm interested." And said, "Is it?" And I think he posted something along the lines, "Okay, starts at 500K or plat." And my response was lame, and I left.
Yeah, exactly.
And he got kind of ticked off at me, like, "Hey, dude, I think bidding wars are lame." So that's if you expect me to respect the fact that you're doing a bidding war, you have to respect the fact that I think it's lame. Otherwise, it's kind of silly.
See, and some guilds, I mean, like the defense guild, we don't have a lot of official rules. In fact, I don't think we have any official rules. The closest thing we might have to an official rule is don't be a douchebag. Um, but we kind of have like a list of, I don't know, secret rules maybe. And one of the things we don't do is we don't buy raid loot. You know, uh, we've had people do it, and I mean, and it's not great. We don't advertise it, and we try not to sell raid loot. And we've done it. I've done it. I sold something to Xylo. He's like, "Hey, I'll give you 5 red scales for this." I'm like, "Whatever." And I don't even think I got my 5 red scales out of the deal, but I gave it to him. I'm like, "Here, take it. If you want it that bad, here, have it." And I mean, it's just one of those deals. It's like, if a friend of yours wants something that bad, I mean, I just give it to him. But it's one of those things that you just selling something like that everyone works together for to be able to have the option to get, typically against a lot of long-time vets, that will leave a little bit of stain uh, in those long-time vets.
Yeah, and like I said, there's not really anything wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong.
It's your loot, but understand if you're gonna do it, understand that it kind of rubs some people the wrong way, myself
Exactly.
included. So
Like you said before, it's your prerogative to do it. It's our prerogative to, uh, remember that characteristic of you later.
yep. The only other thing, just to kind of close out the loot topic, I would say if I've been in situations where there's been a healer item in the chest, and a guy like, "Hey, does the healer want this?" A cleric speaks up, and there's some interesting situation where he wanted to give it to a healer. I was on my bard, who is a healer,
Right.
and he basically ignored me as a bard. So if you're giving an item away to people that you don't know, but you want to be selective about who you're giving it to, be a little open to what that might actually be. Like, not all healers have a cleric or favorite soul symbol, for example.
Or be extremely specific so
Yeah.
people don't get their hopes up. Like, I fit in this generic term. Like, hey, does any of the melee want this? Well, my fighter, who typically uses a bow at the moment, isn't a melee, but would like to have that for his melee option. Am I excluded? Am I included? What about my cleric? My cleric might be melee. Is he allowed to? It's one of those deals where you either need to be extremely specific or be open to vagueness.
Yeah, and in the end result of that story was I sent him a tell and said, "Hey, I would have loved to have had an opportunity to get that. I was also a healer." And I think I even told him, like, and to be honest, I was a lot better healer than the other guy because I kind of had to heal him or something. It was one of those weird situations where my bard was pulling most of the healing weight
It was
over
like
the
an
other guy.
old-time Shroud raid.
Yeah, and it
Where
wasn't,
all of a sudden the bard is doing 90% of the heals.
and all I said was, "Hey, just an FYI, my bard was a healer. I was a healer in that raid, and to be frank, I was kind of pulling more than my fair share of the weight. And the response I got was, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't even consider that." So it wasn't antagonistic or anything. But just kind of a situation. If you're gonna do that, be a little open to what people are. So, I think on that, let's talk about dealing with conflict
Okay.
for a few minutes without punching people in the face.
Oh, I don't have a lot then.
um, I would say just to open this up, give pugs a second chance. Be forgiving as a default. Keep that in mind. People are people. People make mistakes, and they may or may not apologize for them. And so just kind of be aware of that. Often the way that you handle someone making a mistake or you making the mistake is oftentimes more important than the mistake itself. I've had people that have completely failed a raid, like they killed the entire raid for everyone by making a mistake. And I've had a conversation with them after it, and I've let them back in the raid or in another raid. Probably not the next one, but I've let them come again later, because they handled it well, not because they made the mistake, but because of how they handled it. So that's just kind of something to think about. Also, I'd say people have bad days. No, this week I've had a couple of bad days, and the way that some stuff played out, it kind of affected what I was doing because I had a bad day. Don't. And some guilds also have bad apples, so don't necessarily consider a whole guild to be worthless because one or two people were. Do you want to step in and add something there?
Well, I don't know. I think you summed a lot of that stuff up extremely well. I think the other thing that I would kind of throw in there is occasionally you might have to administer a lesson. And the secret of administering a lesson is to not cram it down somebody's throat. It's to trick them into accepting it with sugar. If someone really is having major problems or major issues or something, there's a classic method called the bun method. You have the positive bun, you have the meat where there's the problem, and you have the closing positiveness. It's one of the side effects of having to be a leader is you have to, grow that larger community that I've kind of been talking about, where your player pool, not everyone's going to be at the same skill level, not everyone's going to be at the same education level, not everyone's going to be at the same gear level, etc. Some people, destiny work, whatever. There's a ton of things that make people not be even, which is great. It's a wonderful thing about DDO that a lot of other games may or may not have. It lets us all be complex, unique individuals. That being said, sometimes those individuals, something that you can do to help them is a little bit of education. And if you try to educate somebody in the wrong tone or from the wrong angle, you're just going to alienate. And that doesn't help anybody. To administer a lesson, it has to be from the right mindset, and it has to be taken with the right mindset. You can't make someone take your lesson, but you can administer it in a way that is non-confrontational, that helps them learn. That being said, sometimes a confrontation is the only way that you're going to make a point. And remember I talked that story about Wansler earlier, yelling at the bard for singing the minus fortification song. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to stand up and argue your point. But at the same time, keep in mind, yes, it's a video game. Yes, there are other people on the other side of the screen. Yes, it's your reputation that's being affected. Like we said, oh, I remember that name, but I don't remember something bad. All of a sudden flips the difference, like, oh yeah, I know that name. That guy's a jerk. That is not where you want to be, even if you're trying to be helpful.
Yeah, I would say just a quick note on the minus fortification song. Tell him to toggle his defensive fighting on and off.
Thin. That was not thin. That wasn't an option then. That came later. But yes.
something too that I just want to make sure we put in this: know when to walk away.
That's also true.
You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. Sometimes you just need to walk away.
And sometimes just them, sometimes you don't have to be the guy to give the lesson, and that's the other thing too, maybe they're not ready to hear it. Maybe you're just pissing into the wind. You got to be careful.
Yeah, and a tactic that I've found to be really helpful is, if I find myself in an argument or a conflict, ditch the mic, type, for a couple reasons. One, it slows you down. Most people can't type as fast as they can talk. So that can really, if you slow yourself down, it makes you a little bit more deliberate. You have the option to read what you're typing before it actually goes public. So it can save yourself from sticking your foot in your mouth a little bit. It can slow you down a little bit. And also, I generally try and subscribe to a 2 to 3 shot rule. If I can't if it's not getting better after like 2 or 3 attempts of typing something, I'm done. Like that, I gotta cut it off. Not that I've always followed that, but pretty much, if I haven't followed that, it doesn't get better.
Yeah, it's really hard for people to, one, realize that it's happening, and two, head it off at the pass. Um, it's a real challenge, and if you're a person that's good at doing that, great. But for everyone else, you just have to start coming to the conclusion that it's a problem for you, and it's a problem for almost everybody. And you need to figure out the warning signs that you can use to stop it.
Yep. And there's also some really be willing to take some advice, even if it's bad advice. Be willing to be wrong too. Like someone might tell you that you're wrong, and I've seen people get in conflict because someone said that they were wrong, and they said no, they weren't, and they were totally wrong. So was the other guy. But you know, be aware of that.
The other thing to keep in mind is, especially in a raid, and I don't know if this is on the list anywhere, I'm not seeing it, but if you're in the raid and you're arguing with one other person, that means there's 10 innocent bystanders that you may or may not be belligerent as well. I don't know how many times 2 people have started arguing in a raid, and I've just thrown my headset down in disgust, which all of a sudden takes that raid from me being the most effective party member to being somebody who can't communicate now. I have no options to communicate. I just have to go with my medicine. So then what happens if I'm not following an instruction that a leader is starting to give out because you and somebody else have started arguing over something inconsequential to me? Now I'm at fault because I took my headset off.
Yep.
Everything affects everybody else in some way, shape, or form, and we just all have to try to follow that golden rule a little bit.
And I'd say if you can, this is kind of true for guild conflict too. If you can, try and deal with it one-on-one. That's the best case scenario. You deal with it one-on-one. Maybe the resolution for that is, okay, we're gonna part ways. We're not gonna play with each other. That's fine. But if you can do it one-on-one, that's gonna be better than involving everybody. If you can't deal with it one-on-one, maybe if you have someone that you can both mutually respect and can have kind of step into the conversation, you can do that. Otherwise, just go your separate ways. Now, I realize that doesn't not the way that people tend to do conflicts, not the way that I've tended to do conflict in the game either all the time. But if that's just some general conflict, even in the real world, that tends to save some people some embarrassment and whatnot. And sometimes if you're doing it one-on-one, it's a lot easier for the other person to deal with it too, because they're not as concerned with trying to save face in front of 20 other people.
Exactly. And honestly, if you think about your real world arguments, how many arguments have ever been sorted by 6 of your peers standing around being forced to listen to your argument? Almost none, probably. right? If an argument's going to come to a positive resolution, it almost always happens one-on-one or one-on-one with some sort of mediator or something like that. It almost never will you come to a useful decision when you're fighting in front of a group.
Yeah, and if you're gonna fight in a group, you're gonna tell everyone else in that group that's not involved that you're contentious, and they may not want to with you.
Ooh, big word. Golf clap for you. Contentious.
Thank you. Let's close this out. Let's briefly talk about raid specific things. What are some things that you need to think of to be considered of in raids specifically for etiquette?
Um, my biggest concern with the raid is, unfortunately, you have to follow the star. To me, that is the key to getting through a raid. If you signed up to have the star, you'd better lead it. And if you signed up to join a raid, and that means you're taking on saying, "I will follow that star." To me, that is number one. Number two would probably be a matter of knowing what's going on. Because sometimes you're going to be given a task, maybe spontaneously, maybe planned, that you're going to have to jump on right away. So try to have good situational awareness of what's going on. Going back to your previous example of the monk in the Fall of Truth raid, hey, I need you to do X. He went and did X. He was aware of the situation, didn't argue, he went and he did it. And third, like I said, it's all about having fun. If you can have fun and you can get everyone else having a little bit of fun, do it. I mean, and if that fun means you can't be overly verific on the mic, then you need to back that down because you want everyone to have fun. It's a positive experience for 11 other people.
Yeah, this is good advice. I think it's always worth kind of keeping in the back of your mind that if the raid fails, then 12 people are gonna go away angered and embittered.
Exactly. Like, not just me getting negatively affected here, these other guys are also going to be annoyed.
Yeah, generally speaking, that's the rule. Obviously, there are special situations where you may be required, if you're qualified, you may need to take over the leading in the raid. Start by assuming that now is not that time.
I said, I wish to God I could come up with some sort of test to let you know when that time is right. Because for every time it's succeeded and I've salvaged a raid, there's been at least 2 where I ended up with mud on my face because the raid was at a point where it was unsalvageable and I should have just let the leader go down with the ship instead of trying to, because like I said before, you become the leader in that situation and that becomes your ship and it's already sinking. So, I mean, you got to be really, really careful in that kind of situation.
You're also going to need to have, if that's a situation, you're also going to need a personality that you have to win the other 11 people, including the other star, the guy with the star, over to following you too. So
Almost always, except typically there's not really 11 people. Usually there's like 4.
that's true.
Because it's only the 4 people that that aren't soul stones, that are quality players usually at that point in time, that you're trying to try to turn, like, all right, there's 4 of us left. Now's the point in time where the defense guild needs to step up and save this raid, do X, do Y, do Z, and then we'll salvage everybody else at the end. You know what I mean? It's very much that kind of situation. And I wish, like I said, if I could find that correct test, if anyone else out there has suggestions, like criteria for like when you need to step up and take charge, I would love to hear it. I imagine you would too. But
yeah, I mean, you're just going to have to get used to it and get a good feel for it. And know it helps if you have led the raid a bunch of times and kind of know where things are and have a good idea of what being a good leader in that raid is.
And that being said, that's not always necessarily the case. I mean, sometimes I've stepped into a raid raw and had to assume command. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. So, I mean, you, it's weird. And don't try to do it if you're not comfortable with it. It's just easier to let it fail, let it go down, and find somebody else to try to ride that ship to victory than to try to be the guy, because that's what kills you. That is if you're stepping up and you're taking command, it's your ship now. It's your country. You're the one you can't blame the previous guy. We can't blame George Bush for everything. Sometimes Barack Obama's got to step up and take some responsibility. I mean, it's the same thing in DDO in that raid.
Yep.
Wow, I can't believe I slammed that in there.
Very
Such
nice.
a jerk.
I'd say just as a closing thought, pay attention in a raid. A lot of raids, timing can be critical, and when that instruction comes, you need to be ready to do it. Particularly if you don't know the raid, be ready to follow instructions at a moment's notice, even if they don't make sense. I can't believe I even did this. I spent about 10 minutes trying to get a guy up through the jumping section of Temple of Deathworm or something like that, and I literally had to practically push him into a laser beam so he could die, so I could take his stone up through the jumping area, and he just wouldn't take that simple instruction. Like, dude, I'm trying to help you, just die, so I can take you up there. And long story short, he ended up being completely useless because he fell off the top during the raid fight and couldn't do anything helpful. He ended up leaving the party. But
yeah, but on the flip side, you're comfortable with the ability you did every single thing you could, right?
other than the fact that I should have left him, and I was sending him telling look, either die or leave because I'm going up and you're gonna get stuck here and you're not gonna be helping anything. So take it back. But yeah, I should have left him earlier. So
maybe, but like I said, on the flip side, you did every single thing you could. I mean, you cannot fault yourself for not trying 110%. Now,
True.
Granted, you may be irritated, and you may that guy might stand out in your memory as a negative, but you can't feel faulted for that.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, you actually get mail?
Often? A little bit.
Oh,
well,
I'm
these
so
are
jealous.
These are questions from the surveys I took.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna move into lightning post here, and I put in 2 questions here, and I may not ask the second one just because of time. But we'll start with Propane asks, how often do you pug? Why not more or less? I pug fairly frequently because my guild is kind of slow right now, and the channel is the group of folks that I was in more has kind of waned a lot over the last couple of months. But generally, how much I pug tends to be dictated by 2 things. One is, actually, I guess 3 things. One is anyone else running something. No, 2. Are the people that I'm with around and doing something, and do I really want to lead something? Or do I want to deal with having to lead something and organize something? Those are kind of the 2 things.
Yeah, I would say that I'm kind of on a downturn for pugging again. And I hate to blame the free-to-play model, but ever since the free-to-play model came out, I've just kind of had this negative trend of wanting to lead less and less and less and less. That being said, I feel like I lead the guild stuff constantly. You know what I mean? And gambling with people is really hard now. When I pug now, it's basically due to almost challenges from people like, hey, why don't you pug on this stream today? All right, well then I'll turn on the pug. Or me trying to go out of my way to pug something out. But I would say maybe I pug something once or twice a month now.
Geez.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty infrequent, and I would like to do more, but I just feel like I've been burned so many times. That being said, I've had so many crazy good experiences pugging. My first group through the Demon Web, I had 2 or 3 guildies and we pugged the rest of the slots, and none of us had done it before. And we just said, hey, we're going to learn this all together. Let's just do it. And it was great fun. I mean, it wasn't efficient and it wasn't uh, very effective, but we had a lot of fun. So it's one of those, I don't know. I wish I would be in the mood to do it more.
Yeah, I'd say by and large, my pugging experience has been positive. I mean, it's just the horror stories are the ones that kind
That's
of
just
stick out in
it.
your
Like I
mind.
said, it's almost always a good experience lately. You know what I mean? I feel like the player base has got their knowledge up to where it's not a problem. Um, but I mean, on the flip side, I've got so many different channels set up where I can pull from those channels. I don't necessarily need to go just to random puggers. We spend a lot of time and energy getting the guild to a certain point. Most of the guild members are self-sufficient, to an extreme. So it's just one of the situations like we don't need anybody to finish this. We've been doing Epic Elite just about everything, so we don't need to fill that last slot or those 2 slots or whatever.
Yep.
So, I mean, if I were to say why, I'd be a combination of yours, depending on my mood, and the lack of a need.
Yeah, and there's certain quests I just don't bother pugging too. It's like it's just gonna be easier if I just run it myself.
Right.
But Samius1 asks, what are some of your pet peeves, both player cost and game design?
Whew,
Let's keep it brief.
I'll try. I'm trying to think of something. Uh, Obviously, everyone's familiar with my armor class problem.
Yep.
So we'll leave it at that. I think that's probably why yeah, I see that smirk on your face. It's like that's why. Um, but if I were to, I'm gonna say player wise, it's probably going to be the misconception of builds. I mean, and that's been a long standing one. That's why I started the original um, sound concept segment when I was doing it. Uh, it's one of those things that kind of followed me forever. Is that a non-mainstream build isn't necessarily bad or isn't necessarily good if it is a mainstream build. Um, so I mean, try to be open-minded, and honestly, it doesn't matter how great the build is. It almost always comes down to the skill level of the player playing that build, and therefore, build doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah, skill's a major part of that. I'd say game design wise, my pet peeves are I don't mind getting slowed down occasionally, but the excessive slowing down, getting my movement speed slowed, particularly when it comes to crippling archers and dungeon alert being so. I think the dungeon alert it's too aggressive, and it doesn't take into account any kind of defenses. I find that to be really annoying. I hate getting slowed down excessively. Um, Pet peeves in terms of player, the bidding off loot on a bidding war. I kind of despise that. Um, it's not something. It's something that kind of always bothers me. Even though I recognize it's perfectly fine for them to do. It just kind of bothers me. And then I would say people that come on and kind of do either they start talking like they know everything when obviously they don't, or they just start linking gear. Mostly because usually in both cases it kind of proves the opposite of what they're trying to say. But
Um, I would like to go ahead and also loop my game design one more time. Since you kind of went with red alert, quests where the red alert playing the dungeon as it's intended and it jumps to a red alert is very, very irritating. I
yes,
want to put
that's
that
true.
out there as well in case somebody is listening, um, who can look at some situations specifically what's the new fire raid called?
Fire peaks.
Fire peaks. That one in particular is very bad, because typically you go red alert, you don't make it very long in that particular raid. Um, but yeah, I mean that's just an irritant of mine. I guess I'll throw that in there as well.
Yeah, I don't mind the concept of red alert so much. The slowing down of the movement penalty is the part that always has bothered me, and I've always hated that.
Yeah, you're going around, you're killing guys. You might be killing them a little slower than you intended, but you're killing the guys. And then all of a sudden you're moving through molasses because, 10 more guys spawned, it's red alert, and you're done.
Yep. Well, with that, let's close this show out before we get too much more long-winded. Thanks to Samus for joining me here. Come on. And thanks to boy, that's not just gonna work for me, is it? All right. Thanks to all the
Solid
other,
for
I guess.
seven.
Yeah, it's sometimes it kind of becomes problematic. Um, but thanks for Lesson for the commercial, and thanks to everyone else for being a part of the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making the game. We even the things that are pet peeves for us. And thanks to Cybers for hosting the show. Hit us up at DDOCast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous show, swag, and other fun stuff. If you want to be part of the show, or just say hi, you can email us at DDOCast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for latest cast updates. Closing tip for the week. Bartolomeo says, ask the party leader for popping a hire. Good advice when we're talking about pug etiquette. So with that, until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your trust level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to play well with others.